I sit here tonight, I'm playing songs at the bar, wait for these people to put some bread in my jaw. I'm just about done, that's when she walks in. The lights go out and now the fun's about to begin. The fun's about to begin. The fun's about to begin.
Nothing like that has ever happened since then to that degree, but I'm just never going to forget those events ever. And those events led us.
I wouldn't.
Yeah, and those
I'm getting chills just to talking about it. I don't particularly want to be in that position.
No, and that story actually, and those events got us on the TV show Terror in the Woods, and there's a version of that because it changed networks, but it's also called These Woods Are Haunted. And then we're on a small town monsters documentary on the trail of Bigfoot about that one night.
Yeah. Well, so when did they contact you about doing the TV show?
That was, I don't know, maybe a year or so later. I was initially contacted through Facebook, and I thought it was a joke at first. I thought someone was pulling my leg, like, yeah, right, you know. And then this lady called because they wanted my number, and she's like, well, here's your itinerary. You're going to go to Philadelphia, and you're going to be in this hotel. I'm like, yeah, sure we are, you know. And I called the hotel, and I said, hey, is there a reservation? I give both names. Oh, yeah, you have a rooms reserved. And then I go, is it paid for? Yes, it's paid for. And I'm like, oh, my God, they're not kidding.
Yeah, bonus.
So, so we went to Philadelphia, and we were interviewed and filmed for that. We didn't play ourselves. They got actors, and the production company was from Canada. So all that stuff was filmed in Canada. That is not where it happened.
Do you frequent back to the same place? Do you go to the same location?
We have went to the same location. A lot of people don't know that Terror in the Woods, the second season, there's an episode called Devil Monkey. We are the researchers that the Valley family met at the library.
Oh, nice.
Michael Sheehan, who's the producer of Terror in the Woods, did not want to use us again because he wanted all new people. So they kind of changed that story up, and they did use our audio, and we are credited at the end of the episode. But we were the researchers that went to the Valley property, and they really did. The Mrs. Valley did make her husband sell that property. And they live in the city now, and she says she's never going back in the woods again.
Wow.
In all the Native American languages, they have a word for Bigfoot, and it doesn't conclude to it being a deity or a god. It's keeper of the woods, watcher of the woods, hairy man of the woods. You know, it's not a story that we gave them. They already had it. It's in their culture. It's in their artwork. It's in things they made. Because that stuff like that's been found. I just think that somewhere on the tree of life, it's going to fit in. It's like, oh, okay, you know, it's just going to make sense.
Honestly, we don't really know, do we?
We don't.
No, we don't.
But like a lot of people talk about it having mythical capabilities and disappearing and cloaking. I don't know about that. I think, you know, some of the hairs that have been found, the characteristics of it, the coloration, how the color changes from the tip to the base of the hair.
Yeah, I've seen that, yes.
I think this thing can turn in a certain direction and blend into its surrounding. Just like, you know, I've been hiking before and almost ran into a deer that I didn't see, and I was looking that direction until it moved. Now, if a deer can hide, and they're a pretty big animal, this thing can hide. And I just think there's things we don't know, and because of how well it moves through the woods, oh, this thing is, you know, it's magical. It just ran up this hill. Well, its anatomy and it's the way its foot is built is different than ours. You know, Jeff Meldrum has talked about that. Dr. Jeffrey Meldrum.
Yeah, they have like two balls on their feet. Like we have a ball of the foot, but it has like They have like two balls of their feet. Like it bends in two places.
Yes, and they're able to run up terrain and hills and make it look effortless. This thing is built to maneuver in its terrain, and it can do that very fluidly and make it look like it's nothing, where we would stumble and fall and look pretty stupid trying to climb up that way, but they do that and they don't think twice about it. But that's what I think leads into people thinking, oh my goodness, this thing just floated up the hill. Well,
Yeah.
you know, it's built
Magic.
it's built to, you know, do that. Like watch a cat, how a cat moves, you know. I just think there's a natural explanation for that. It's a real animal, but it moves that way because it is a real animal. Or not, or whatever it is, you know.
It's designed to do what it does.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. I heard that you took a trip up to the Northwest, and even though you've met him many times before, I know that you were hanging out with a very famous Bigfooter up there. And could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, in 2018, we were invited to speak at the International Bigfoot Conference in Washington, in Kennewick, Washington, and you know, we got to hang out with Bob Gimlin, and he's just salt of the earth. He's America's grandfather. You know, he's just a wonderful man, and we turned that into a little vacation. We had some other people go with us, and we did a lot of sightseeing, you know, besides being at the conference. And you know, we got to see you know, Mount St. Helens. We went to Mount Rainier in Washington. We went to Cannon Beach, Oregon, and
A lot of sightings around there.
yes. Oh, and we stopped at a restaurant that we ate at, and they openly talked about Bigfoot like it was no big deal.
Wow.
And it was really neat. We just kind of sat and listened, and we heard a lot of stories from some of the Native Americans we talked to there. You know, I think that if there's going to be some kind of a breakthrough in Bigfoot evidence, I think it's going to happen in the Midwest. You know, Ohio, Michigan, Kentucky, somewhere, Tennessee maybe. And I'm not trying to anger anyone there because I know there's more Bigfoot in Washington State than there are in Ohio, but the land there is so vast. This thing it's in the woods, and if you approach it, it can keep going deeper in the woods, and it's going to move away and it's going to be gone. Where in the Midwest, you know, like Ohio, you've got sections of woods, but they're crisscrossed by towns and roads. But I loved it out there, and any time you spend with Bob is precious.
Absolutely. Great guy.
We didn't see anything when we were out there Bigfoot related. We really didn't have time to try to research. It was basically go around and just look at all the wonder. And besides the trees, you know, the rivers, they were blue. You come back to Ohio and they're
Green.
yeah, and
brown.
they don't look good. And I'm like, come on. And but we really enjoyed ourselves, and you know, just Mount St. Helens, what happened there, and where that blew out, and just, you know, just imagine the force that would have been. And you know, we heard reports where Bigfoots were found, you know, killed by that, you know.
I have heard that, yeah.
And that was covered up, but
Yeah, actually, statistically, I think the Midwest has more sightings than the Northwest, but I'm sure we don't have more creatures. I just think that it's more accessible, and so more sightings happen. I think statistically,
sense.
we actually have more sightings in the Midwest than they do in the Northwest. You know, easier to find, easier to see.
right.
Have you heard of any around here in Houston Woods and this area, the state park? Anything here?
Yes, locally in Preble County, back in the 70s was a big flap because over by Roberts Covered Bridge, where it was at that time, because they have moved it to preserve it, some teenagers were supposedly chased that were out walking. And a person that we ran into later on, named, I'm just going to give his first name, Dave, worked for the local, there was a family had an orchard, and he worked there. And they seen the cop car with the lights on down toward this was like at the end of their property. And they sent him down to find out what the police were doing down there. And when he went down there, the teenagers were in the cop car, and they were hysterically frightened and refused to get out of the car. The cops kind of really didn't believe their story that they were chased. But when they looked along Twin Creek there, they actually found tracks in the creek. And,
Wow, big ones.
and I know, my ex-wife is from there, and she was younger, way younger then, but she remembers her dad traveling with a shotgun in the truck. And people were on edge. The townspeople were on edge, just like the stories from like Boggy Creek. The same thing was happening there, especially people that lived on the perimeter of town where it was more wooded and more wild. People were armed themselves, and they were being it's like one of them old horror movies. People were tense. Dave actually, he's not with us anymore, but he actually owned land over by the orchard, and got to talk to him, and he says, we're just kind of talking in general, and he mentioned that the thing still follows the creek today.
Wow.
Which floored me, and he told me that as it moves up that creek, all the bugs down at the end stop, and then when it's right in front of where his property, everything goes quiet. If the wind's blowing this way towards his property, he can smell it. It doesn't smell very good. The dogs he have go under the porch.
Wow.
And they whimper. They want no part of whatever's over there. And he says as it moves down the creek away from him, the bugs down here come back to life, and they start being quiet up this way. And it was just really intense talking to him because he lived there. He's been there. One thing he mentioned about the owners, the wife of the I don't know if you want to call that him a farmer or what that would be, but she's seen it in the orchard during the day, and to her it was so hideous that she did not believe God would create anything that looked like that.
Wow.
So she called it the orchard devil, because it would come up and take apples. So this one guy was just a treasure trove of information. And so yeah, and this thing, we've talked to a few people that live in the area outside. I can't really give their names because it's private property, but this thing seems to be, it's still in the area, it's moving through the creek, it doesn't stay in one area because, I think it moves from place to place feeding or whatever it finds, but they're finding oddball things on their property. They're finding the trees, the structures. One lady in particular is putting out peanut butter, and it's being, and she's putting out gifts, and it spooked their horse. Her and her sister actually grew up on this property back in the 70s. It was their mom and dad's house, and back during the 70s, this thing was cutting through there, and it actually walked by the house one evening, and the smell of it came through the windows. And their dad screamed, shut the door, because at that time back then people left doors and windows open.
Yes.
But it's still in that area.
That's incredible. Yeah, I have heard also that they do follow creeks and rivers and waterways. They follow them almost as a highway system.
Yes.
Staying close to the water.
And that makes sense because it's water, plus you're not probably going to find a lot of people, especially 2 or 3 in the morning.
Yes.
And that's the thing, these things cut through. They use the rivers and the creeks to move. And then in Ohio, you get all the farmland, you get all the corn growing. It could cut through a cornfield unless you're standing there 2 or 3 in the morning. You're not going to know.
Any young researchers out there that might be considering trying this out, what advice would you give to them? Where should they start?
My advice is to buddy up, have a few friends when you go out, because a lot of places you can get into, you don't have phone service. And if somebody twists an ankle or gets hurt, if you're by yourself, you might find yourself in trouble. So the buddy system's always good.
Make sure someone knows where you are.
Yeah, take equipment with you, flashlights, stuff you need. Let people know where you're going, and bring a camera, bring a tape measure. If you do find something, you can, like a track, you can measure it. Something for scale. Buy the little handheld recording devices like people use in meetings, and just turn that on and leave it out and set it somewhere and see what it picks up.
If they were in an area and saw a structure, how could they tell that this is a structure that was built or something that maybe hunters or man put together just so they'd have a blind, or if it's maybe storm damage, or if it was to be something real? I've seen structures in the woods, some small, some big, tree breaks and things like that. What specifically, because sometimes trees just fall, sometimes things happen. So what would be a distinguishing factor? What would make you go, that's not natural.
What I would look for is anything that's kind of shaped like a rudimentary teepee in a way. And then normally, but you'll still see that, naturally where, trees fall and everything. But one thing you'll notice is usually when it's natural, the rest of the canopy has been disturbed and that's open, where you'll see something that's leaned together, but everything up above it is still intact. Other things to look for is tree breaks, like where the tree's been snapped and laid, and they're all at that same angle. And someone say, well, that could be wind. It could be wind, but if the rest of the canopy isn't tore out, and it's just these certain branches and they're all facing this way, that's, we found structures before where the tree has actually been broken, dragged, moved, 40, 50 yards and leaned into another tree. And a tree that's a foot or two around, a human being is not going to drag a tree and then lean it into another one.
They couldn't. Yeah, I don't know of a man that could. Okay, well, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. I know you drove a long way to get here, and I'm very grateful for you to do this.
Anytime.
Some of our viewers might want to get in touch with you, reach out with some experiences they've had, or some questions they have, or strange things happening on their property, or just ask questions. How could they reach you?
The best way to reach us is through Facebook. We have our own page, it's Ohio Night Stalkers, a space between each word, but they can contact us through there. And then we do lectures at libraries throughout Ohio and neighboring states, and we're at some conferences, and we always post where we're going to be. Also, they can contact us. Email is ohionightstalker@zoomtown.com.
Nice. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate
my pleasure.
it. Thanks. Thank you, everybody, and take care, and we'll see you next time.
Body stop, drum, crashing, moves to